And I think where so much it comes down to, I know it came down for me, is actually trusting that God actually has my best interest at heart.
He absolutely does.
He does.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what first round pick, the path least chosen, is really about.
Yep.
I mean, the blessings that I received through sports and reaching my dream, I reached it.
Yeah.
And I was courageous enough to really trust God.
100%.
Yeah, 100%.
Hey, we're back for part 2 with Ken Barlow here on the Daron Earlewine podcast, the Death of a Dream podcast series. And I want to remind you guys that you can pre-order my book, The Death of a Dream. It's coming out October 18th, but you can pre-order it now. And we'll have that information here on the podcast a little bit later. But you can go out wherever you're finding all your book ordering information, Target, Barnes & Noble, all that. But this series we're doing is an opportunity to learn from other people's stories, how God is faithful to see us through the death of a dream and bring about the resurrection of his purpose for our life. And so, Ken, we're back for the second half of your story.
Yes.
Basketball was the dream.
It was.
First round draft pick, NBA. Mm-hmm. You accomplished it.
Yes.
Drafted by the Lakers. Immediately traded to the Falcons. Or not Falcons.
The Hawks.
Hawks. And then you realize, man, I don't know that God is completely opening this NBA door. I think there could be something that he wants me to do in Europe.
Right. I came to that point. I was really like, okay, I think God is talking to me and he's telling me, you got here, but I have something better for you.
Wow.
And I was courageous enough to trust really my intuition and when God was speaking to my heart.
Yeah.
And I signed a contract to go to Milan, Italy. Really under some great guidance of my agent at the time who I ended up in a city that even my cultural transition wasn't as challenging.
Okay.
Simple things like having an American movie theater was critical, or having a USA Today newspaper or Herald Tribune was a big part of it as well in terms of my transition. But I went to Italy, and I met some amazing people in Italy. Even my first year, just from a basketball perspective, I mentioned in the last series we were talking about Mike D'Antoni was the point guard.
Yeah.
Who's now a renowned, maybe not renowned, but a great NBA coach.
Yeah.
Bob McAdoo was a 3-time NBA scoring champ. NBA MVP was another one of my teammates who took me right under his wing. I mean, we were roommates on the road, felt like college with him, and he was just mentoring me. I had an American coach, a guy, Dan Peterson, who's out of Evanston, Illinois, who was helping me with just the transition of the languages, and we had a great team. So in terms of pushing us for excellence and being our best, I couldn't ask for a better group of people, of players, family. Really was a family atmosphere. And the year is still monumental for me and for the organization. We ended up winning everything in Europe that year. We were the European champions. We were the Italian League champions on top of it.
Wow.
And it was really a phenomenal season. A few unbelievable things happened. There was, I don't know, it would take a long time to tell this one story. I don't really want to tell this whole story, but some phenomenal things happened that had never really happened in European basketball before. And it was a great year. And at the end of that year, I was like, wow. I mean, I definitely didn't think I was going to Atlanta to win an NBA title in 86.
Yeah.
Right? And I ultimately won an Italian League title, an Italian Cup title, and a European title with Tracer Milano.
Yeah.
And playing with some great guys and great relationships. And now I'm a 23-year-old, still just finishing my rookie year.
Yeah.
And so we were still actually trying to work, because when Atlanta offered me the contract and I turned it down, they actually owned me for 2 years. Like I couldn't even talk to another NBA team. I could only talk to them.
Get out of here, really?
Yes. So when they tender you the offer and you turn them down, that's fine, but you can't talk to anybody else.
Oh, wow.
So I asked my agent, I said, okay, he goes, listen, they own you. The season was great. Let's see what they're going to do. So they were actually, at that point, they was like, okay, you're serious about your career. You're serious about who you are. We're going to trade you. But anyway, they drugged the trade. They never traded me that whole summer. The promise was they were going to trade me. They didn't trade me. So ultimately, I waited too long to even go back to Milan to play. The team from Milan needed me to sign in August. I was waiting on Atlanta. Atlanta didn't trade me. So I was like, okay, what do I do now, God?
Yeah.
And so my agent comes to me. He goes, hey, I got an opportunity for you just to play 1 week for a team in Israel. They're going to be in Italy. They're going to play a tournament. They want you to come over for 1 week. They're going to sign you to a week contract. It was a great deal. So I signed for a week.
Yeah.
And so that whole week, I'm on the phone every day with my agent. I'm like, okay, what's Atlanta? Are they going to trade me? And things were going well. I'm 25, 30 points a game.
Yeah.
In this like tournament, a preseason tournament. So ultimately the team comes to me in Israel. We're playing in Italy and they say, listen, we need to fly you to Israel. We want you for the whole year. Your play this week is phenomenal. So I asked my agent, I said, wait, is Atlanta going to, he goes, they haven't come close to the trade. They're talking about a trade, but they don't have names. They don't have teams. He says, what do you want to do? I said, well, I have no problem with Israel. I said, I'm just making sure that we've exhausted all of our opportunities with Atlanta. So I left from Italy, flew to Israel, signed the contract, flew back to Italy, played 2 more games, and then flew home, and ultimately got my bags together and flew to Israel for the next 3 years. And it was a great experience in Israel. I never could even imagine that.
Wow.
So now I'm leaving Italy, and I didn't even think I wanted to leave Italy, and God opened the door for me in Israel. Yeah. So I go to Israel. And I'm playing for this team, Maccabi Tel Aviv, which is...
Before we go there, here's a point I want to bring out the real, Kim.
Yeah.
Is one thing that I tell people, and it's actually one of the chapters in the book is about when a dream dies. So often we try to keep it on life support.
Right.
And we just need to let it die.
You do. Yeah, I agree with that.
And I think about, like, I know where your story is going, right? This story is continuing going up and to the right.
Right.
Think about this. You had another moment that second year that if you would have held out, let's say you would have stayed and said, no, I'm going back I'm not trusting what God's doing with me in Europe or in Israel.
Right.
I'm going to Atlanta. Think about if you would have held on to it, they wouldn't have traded you.
Right.
Potentially you come back another year, you sit for that year because you got 4 guys or 5 guys still, that are on the, like, and I feel like there are so many people, and I know that for me, like in my story, there were like 3 or 4 times over almost like 5 years where I kept trying to resurrect my own dream.
Yeah.
And it caused damage in my life, and it caused damage in other people's lives. And so, like, I think it's such a key part of your story that you got to that point you were like, listen, I'm going to let it die. I'm going to Israel.
Right.
God's opened this door. Here we go.
Right.
And you did that. I think it's a huge moment, and I think it's a big teaching moment for us to realize that needs to happen. But you get to Israel, take back over the story.
Yeah, that's you're absolutely true. So I was like, well, I know my season went well, my first year in Italy.
Yeah.
And you haven't traded me. I'm not going to wait on that.
Yeah.
Particularly when someone is telling me, hey, we have a great opportunity for you. Okay, you got to go to the Middle East, which for me wasn't an issue. I'm like, I've been in Europe for the last 9 months. Let's go to Israel.
Yeah.
So I went to Israel, and I knew the reputation of the team was great. They had great organization. And so I ended up in Tel Aviv, Israel, playing for a team, Maccabi Tel Aviv, which is a renowned team. And I'm playing for those guys, and the year was phenomenal. Again, we didn't win the European title, but we finished second.
Okay.
And we won the Israeli title. And at the end of the day of my first year there, I think I wanted to share this story because, like, you never know how God is moving in your life.
Yeah.
And so in terms of, like, even off the court, I'm there my first year, and Christmas shows up, and I'm looking around, and I don't see any Christmas lights. I don't see any Christmas trees. I don't see anything I'm familiar with in terms of my faith around December, November, December. So it's a good friend of mine, a Jewish guy, Mark Zaman. I said, Mark, listen, I'm from the States. I'm a Christian. I said, I need some help here. I said, I need you to help me find a Christmas tree. I need a Christmas tree in my house. I just need to, this is how I celebrate.
Yeah.
So he goes, listen, I can help you, but I don't want to help you. He said, because it's not safe for me, but I can help you. I said, well, will you help me? He goes, I will, because we're good friends. I will help you. He said, but we got to go to the West Bank. And he goes, I'm not real comfortable going to the West Bank. You know all the turmoil that we have here in the country. I'm just not comfortable. He said, but I'm going to take you, Ken. He said, because I know you're trying to connect your faith. You're trying to worship.
Yeah.
So he takes me down to the West Bank, and I meet this Palestinian guy down there who is wrapped up in his robe and his headgear. And I immediately put him in a box to be something that he wasn't in my head. And then he tells me he's a Christian. And like everything I had read, I hadn't read about any Christians on the West Bank, right? So I was trying to process all this information. And so he tells me, oh, yeah, he goes, I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. I believe in my heart. I'm confessing with my mouth this. I'm like, man, I said, that's phenomenal. I said, really? He goes, and I have a Christmas tree for you. So he sold me a Christmas tree. And so we're putting the Christmas tree in Mark's car. And I'm just happy that I've met this gentleman and then I'm ready to go. He goes, listen, he goes, we had a nice relationship in the last 15 minutes. He said, why don't I take you on the 12 stages of the cross, the literal 12 stages of the cross?
Wow.
And I went home after that experience and I called my mother. I said, you know, I said, I met a Christian man who I didn't even think he was even close to being a Christian. And I said, he sold me a Christmas tree and he took me on the literal 12 stages of the cross. And it just kind of I was like, oh my God. I mean, God, I never even thought that this would be part of my basketball experience to even learn. So I developed a compassion or empathy for even people on the West Bank because I'm like, hey, there are people down there who believe exactly like me. Yeah. And anyway, it was just eye-opening for me. It was just one of the most profound things that happened to me as I'm chasing my dream and playing basketball.
God's completely just reshaping your whole view of the globe, your whole view of his kingdom, of how, I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah. So anyway, back to the basketball, and then I started just like periodically going to the synagogue just to meet people and to worship because I couldn't really find a church, a Christian church like in Tel Aviv, or I wasn't going back to the West Bank to do all that. So anyway, I developed relationships with the Jewish community there, and it was phenomenal. The experience on the court was great. We ended up winning 5 more championships.
All you do is win, kid.
Yeah. So we won. Ultimately I ended up having an injury my third year there. I played every game, but I wasn't 100%. So it kind of ended a little bit on the downside physically, but we had achieved and we had done well. My second year in Israel, we should have won the European title, but probably some of the listeners probably remember a guy by the name of Tony Kukoc, who ultimately became the European Player of the Year 3 years in a row. He ended up with the Bulls with Michael Jordan and won 3 championships with those guys. They beat us on a very tough, hard-fought game in 1989, but we still achieved 5 championships there, and it went really well. And but I was coming off an injury my third year there. And a lot of people knew that I had knee surgery, and they, when that happens as a player, kind of your stock goes down a little bit. Sure. And people are kind of questionable, like not your talent, but can you physically compete? So, but as it were, my agent came back to me and he says, "Okay, that's a great run in Israel. Now I have a deal for you to go to Greece. Would you like to go to Greece?" I said, "Listen, I've been to Greece. Yeah." I've read about Greece in the Bible. Yeah. All the things aren't great. I said, where is it? He goes, it's in Thessaloniki. And I was like, I said, I've been there. And I said, I've been in the stadiums in Thessaloniki, and you've never seen passion for basketball.
Really?
I mean, the passion for basketball in Thessaloniki, Greece, in the early 90s when I arrived there. I had been there in the late 80s. It's phenomenal. It's unbelievable. Wow. There are 2 teams in that city, PAOK, that I play for, and another team, Aries. It's like the Lakers and the Clippers, but instead of it being the Clippers, it's really like the Lakers versus Boston in the same city.
Oh, wow.
So you have a highly competitive teams.
Oh, fan base are just off the charts.
Unbelievable. They have a stadium that seats like 8,000, but they only sell 6,000 seats because they have to separate the fans with riot police, like 1,000 on each side. So they can't even sell 2,000 tickets because they need riot police to keep the fans separate. So I'm actually playing. I felt like a gladiator at that point. Really, I felt like I was back in Rome and we're in the Coliseum. Really, I mean, it's
wow.
So we go. So I went to. So PAOK was like on the verge. They hadn't won the championship, and I go there my first year, and God bless the team and me. Once again, we won a European title. They hadn't had a European title in Greece in 20 years. Second year we won.
So now you're like a Greek god for basketball.
Yes. And so, we were talking about this early off screen, but guy Johnny Newman, who's a famous ABA guy, he was a coach in Greece, and he told me when I first arrived there, and I kind of had a sense of what he was going to say, but I didn't think he was going to say exactly like he said. So he goes, "Listen, Ken," he goes, "Welcome to Greece. everybody's followed you from Italy to Israel, and things are going great. He said, but listen, this is Greece. This is a little bit different. He said, two things will happen for you here in Greece. They will either love you or they will run you out of town. So I told him, I said, yeah, like the Apostle Paul? He goes, yeah, exactly like that. He said, you'll have to leave at night. You can't leave in the daytime. You won't make it out. But anyway, when we won, exactly like you just said, we won the European title. And at the end of the day, to kind of cut my 3 years in Greece, we won 2 more titles. We won titles that had never happened before. And now my jersey hangs in the museum in Thessaloniki today, in Paluxy Museum for everything. Man. But who could have thought that in 1986? I mean, I kind of swept through that. I mean, who could have?
Yes.
I mean, you're going from Italy to Israel to Greece, and God has not allowed us to miss a beat on anything. And on the court, it was just phenomenal. In my neighborhood with the people was even more gratifying. It was just the experience that I was gaining on and off the court. I could have never imagined. So when I said no to my dream, I did not know at the time. I knew God could open more doors, but I didn't think he was going to open them that wide. I mean, I think it's unprecedented that an American player has gone to Europe. And for my first 8 years, I didn't lose anything to anybody. And I was like, who could have ever imagined that? I was like, oh my God. I mean, God is just amazing. Yeah. I mean, and it was just the experience of now I'm 57 years old and looking back and the relationships that I have today with people and the way the world is now is just much smaller in the connectivity. So I'm in contact with a lot of my friends from all of those countries and all of those teams, even today. And they're very supportive of me. I've gone back a couple times. I need to go back to Israel. I just haven't been back there in about 15 years, but I've been to Italy and I've been to Greece. But yeah, I just never imagined that I could say no to my ultimate dream and receive a dream that I could have never dreamed of. I guess that's the best way to say it. I could have never imagined that a dream could materialize and be so. And then I go back to Italy after that. After 3 more years in Greece, I go back to Italy. Yeah. And, I had a couple other injuries, but at the end of the day, I ended up on 2 more teams and won 2 more championships.
So in total, how many championships did you win?
So we won 12. We won 12 championships over that 16-year time span.
Here, a question, and your NBA knowledge is going to be better than mine. How many NBA championships did the Atlanta Hawks win over those 12 years?
We're not going to tease them. They're still trying to reach in the last 35 years now. They're still trying to reach that pinnacle.
See, that is amazing, Ken.
Yes. Atlanta's still trying. They're still trying to get there.
Like that's your story. Extrapolate that over anything. God's saying, hey, if you want your dream, if no problem,
right?
You can go struggle here and not win a championship ever,
right?
Or if you want to trust that I might be up to something more, like how about we go win 12 championships, completely reshape your view of the world, of relationships, of culture, of religion, of prejudice, of all of this to become a completely global citizen, 12-time champion. You got your jersey in the museum,
right?
And then now, end the story now, you're back at your alma mater, Cathedral High School here in town, and pouring into the next generation of students with a perspective of you can trust God with your dreams and what you can help them learn about chasing dreams, about overcoming those things, and just about your perspective on what it means to be a global follower of Jesus.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you hit on all the right points on that. It's just amazing. And I try to share that with the students that I have that are coming behind me now. Cathedral had a phenomenal basketball team this year.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not on the bench, but I try to mentor those players, and they have they have a couple guys who I think have an opportunity to reach that dream themselves.
Yes.
And I try to give them just the basic truth about them achieving and doing what God would have them to do by utilizing all of the gifts that God has to their maximum.
Yes.
Like God has blessed you with such gifts. Use those gifts, right? And I encourage them, like I said a little bit earlier in the episode before, I encourage them always, you give your best, you encourage your teammates to give their best
Yes.
as well, or your classmates. It doesn't have to be on the court,
Yeah.
right? And we make this relationship reciprocal, right? So we both can grow that way.
Love it.
And that's I encourage the kids to do that all the time. I mean, that's really what happened to me.
Yeah.
I played with some great players, really kind of some who's. Some of them people remember. My 15th year in Europe, I played with a guy, Miles Simon, who's now an assistant coach with the Lakers. Mm. He was the NCAA Most Outstanding Player in 1997 here in Indianapolis for Arizona.
Yeah.
And I was a 37-year-old, and he was a 24-year-old, and our relationship was really. Let's give our best today, Ken.
Yeah.
Let's put in a little bit extra. I'm there, you're there. We're doing this thing together. Let's get the other guys in on this thing, and let's build this team. And we had a group of really a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds that year, and we won. And I was the old man at that time, but it was the same formula about utilizing the gifts that God had given us, and to encourage each other to give our best. And if we didn't win a championship, it wasn't because we weren't in it together.
Yes.
And it wasn't because we weren't doing what God would have us to do in terms of giving our best efforts.
Ken, I love it. Your story is so inspirational, and I just love the idea of being able to let go of our version.
Yeah.
Right? Our version of a dream, and then come to the place where, and I think where so much it comes down to, I know it came down for me, is actually trusting that God actually has my best interest at heart.
He absolutely does.
He does.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what first round pick, the Path Least Chosen, is really about.
Yep.
I mean, the blessings that I received through sports and trying and reaching my dream, I reached it.
Yeah.
And I was courageous enough to really trust God.
100%.
Yeah, 100%. No question about it. Yeah.
Ken, how do they get the book? Tell them once again. Amazon or your website.
Yeah, you can go to Amazon. You can find First Round Pick, The Path Least Chosen on Amazon. If you don't find it there, you can also find it. There's a link to Amazon on my website, www.kennethbarlow.com.
And Ken, if maybe there's somebody watching, they'd like to maybe have you come in and speak to a school group or a company or a church group or whatever. Are you open to come and speak and tell your story?
Oh, absolutely. I love encouraging, even if you're not an athlete. I mean, I think this transcends even the sport.
No doubt. Absolutely.
And you've mentioned it a lot. I mean, we all come to those crossroads, and that's why I wrote the book. We come to those crossroads, and we have to ask the question, are we really prepared? Are we really trusting God to make the choices that are best for us?
Yes. Ken, I love it so much. Next guest we have here on the podcast will be a foot shorter than me, just to make this better for me. Is that even possible? Can we find anybody that's 4'9"? We're gonna. We need to interview gymnasts from here on out. Anyway, all jokes aside, Ken, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And until we talk to you guys again, remember, God is for you, not against you. He's near you, not far from you, and He's created you on purpose and for a purpose. We'll see you guys next time with the Daron Earlewine podcast.